Hey everybody, welcome back to GameTrailers TV from GDC 2009, and now I'm joined by the legendary game developer, Peter Molyneux. Peter, what brings you to GDC?
Well, I'm here for two reasons really. One is to look around the show and to do this thing called networking. This is new to me. I've never,
Why have you left to network? Everyone knows who you are.
No, I should network.
Low people network.
No, it's just the right thing to do, you know, network and.
So who have you met here?
I've met a lot of, you know, little small developers, and, you know, some of them are doing some really interesting stuff. And, you know, now, this year, I think last year was the year of the small development. You had World of Goo, you had Braid, you had, you know, games like Castle Crashers being really successful. And, you know, that's, you know, I find that absolutely fascinating.
But you are giving a talk here all about some of the experiments you've had at Lionhead over the years. And knowing you're always tinkering, experimenting. What did you show people here? You talked a little bit about the dog and Fable and some of the prototypes for that, right?
So it may well seem I have all the ideas, but I don't. What it is maybe I inspire some of the ideas, but some of these experiments that we've been working on are really, truly fascinating. I think the ones that have failed are slightly more fascinating.
What's your biggest failure? Your biggest experiment?
I think the biggest experiment was something called. You see? It was a thing called The Room, and it's something I'm going to be showing off. And it had these amazing mechanics. So they had these mirrors that you could put things through, and it deforms their shape and their size. It had morphing materials. It had, you know, hypermatter. It had, you know, incredibly high resolution textures. But something went wrong. And the thing that went wrong was why we were doing this experiment. We forgot why we were doing it. It was just cool tech that had no possible roots. It was a complete dead end.
You have to have a game behind it.
You have to have a game. You have to have a game. Around an idea, there has to be a game, and it has to have a purpose, and it has to have a reason. And sometimes you get confused by the sexiness of the tech. You get confused that you're actually still making a game. And many, many times in my past, I have made that mistake again. But then equally, I could show you the experiments that we did with the dog. And, you know, the very simple experiments about whether the dog should be in front of the player or behind the player. And you can see, as I show you, you know, as I show the video on screen, you can see as soon as you put the dog in front, the emotional connection is different. So it's a really, really interesting thing. I think the main thing is that Peter Molyneux doesn't come up with all the ideas by any means. And a lot of the ideas that I do come up with are thrown away by this experimental process.
But there was some stuff on the internet a few months ago. You know, you and I had talked previously about the idea of Justice, which was a first-person shooter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then, did anything ever come of that? Because I know there was some concept art on the internet.
No.
You got really excited, and you were, you know, the idea of a perfectly modeled world.
Yes, and the idea of Justice really was, okay, imagine that you were standing in the dock in a court, and you were just being sentenced, and, you know, for the horrendous murder of your family, say. And imagine that you had lost your memory. You couldn't remember whether you had actually done it or you hadn't done it. Could we make a game around you discovering your memory and finding out whether you did it or not?
It was going to be a first-person shooter, right?
It was first-person shooter was kind of the approach that we were thinking of. And, you know, it seems like quite a cool idea, and that image of being in a court and that being the start of the game, and then being a fugitive running from, you know, the law, and depending on whether, and you'll recognize this from Fable, whether or not you shot policemen or you shot civilians was whether or not you were innocent or guilty. That all sounds really cool.
Sounds like a good game, Peter.
Yeah, but
where is
we worked on the concept, and we then sat down and looked at it, and we said, you know what? This is just going to be very much like a lot of other first-person shooters, and that's not a reason to do something just to do a game.
You have to completely invent a new genre.
Well, you not invent a new genre, but you've got to do something different. I mean, they're doing something different and surprising people. And whilst the idea and the story was cool, the actual mechanics of, you know, you shoot people, it kind of was the same as all the other ones. And, you know, that's not a reason for doing a game for me.
But the experimentation sometimes works out. Fable 2, you know, won a lot of awards. Well, I think one of your highest reviewed games ever, right?
I think it is, yeah. I think it is. It's done pretty well.
And you did some DLC, and there's now another batch of DLC that we're going to be able to see.
Yeah, there's
soon,
another,
right?
you know, don't expect just from Fable, don't expect just, Fable 1, Fable 2, Fable 3, Fable 4, Fable 5.
Right.
Don't expect those to be the only events. There should be other things about Fable which are really interesting. So I think there's a few things coming up. The next thing we've got coming up is DLC 2, and it's called Know the Future.
Okay.
Now here's the interesting thing with that title, Know the Future. What I'm really talking about is if you're interested or fascinated by the Fable story, if you play DLC 2, you're going to have a clue where that story's going. It's an epilogue, and it's a huge sort of tease almost about what is going to happen.
What you need is someone nice to look after you.
Lionhead, no one knows what you guys are really working on right now. You've got a couple of secret projects, but you've teased people certainly about, let's go first of all to September 23rd, 2005.
Right.
The last time we talked to you, you said that was the date that inspired your next game. Is that still the case?
September the 23rd is a very significant date, as you will find out very soon.
And this is tied to AI, which is something that you guys have been really involved in over the past year?
Well, it's tied to two things. One, we've been experimenting with AI forever, and the other is that you can see our first sort of childlike steps in Fable 2 about emotion, about trying to get you to feel something more than just horror and, edge of the seat sort of, killing.
Right.
It's trying to take a genre like an RPG and say, okay, let's try and feel something else. So it's mixing those kind of two things together. I think the next sort of 18 months is a very important time for Lionhead. Because Lionhead shouldn't just exist just to make, Fable after Fable
3,
after
4,
Fable,
5,
4, 5, or whatever it is. It's at the core, and this is what my talk about, the core of why we are like we are is to innovate and to throw away those foundation stones that you think of. And I would love if the Lionhead's going to be remembered for anything, and I think the next 18 months is going to be the time it's going to be remembered for. I'd love that to be for us doing something which the world would think is so brave and so different and so completely out there that it redefines what I think of as a games company.